Hello, it's Christy with greenlivingoffgrid.com, and today we're going to be talking about harvesting potatoes and storing them over the winter. As you can see, we had quite a frost last night, and all of our potato plants are pretty much gone. And that's how I know it's time to pull up the potatoes. One thing I will say is that typically if I know it's going to be a frosty day and I still have my plants and I'm not ready to pull them until I'm sure that they're gone, I'll usually pick out any potatoes that might have come to the surface, because potatoes, as you know, mound up. They tend to come to the surface, and then you just typically add a little bit more mulch or dirt or whatever to during the summer as they grow, so that the potatoes are always covered. So what I usually do when I know I'm going to be getting a heavy frost is I pull up the potatoes from the top that I can see in the top area of the garden bed. And then that way there is a little bit of coverage when the frost hits, so that my potatoes don't end up freezing. And as you can see, we got into the 20s last night, and my potatoes are in really great shape. So that's what I usually do when it's fall time and it's getting close to that time and I'm going to be losing my crop. I will pull the top potatoes when we're going to get some frost, and if my plants survive, then great, I have a little bit longer growing season. But once they're gone, as these are, then it's time to pull everything up. And I'm going to show you today, again, how to harvest the potatoes and store them over the winter. The first thing I like to do when I'm going to harvest is I'll pull up what I can find with my hand, kind of pull the plants up, as you can see here, and usually right about the base of the plant you'll find the potatoes. So I'll start with just kind of gently pulling them up, because if I put a lot of tools in here right away, it can tend to damage the potatoes. So if I get my shovel in here right away, you know, with all these potatoes in here, I can end up with some damage to the potatoes. So usually what I will do is I will gently pull in, kind of scoop the soil with my hand and pull up these potatoes as they come up. And as I pull up the plants, a lot of times you'll see different potatoes that will come up with them. So that's what I'll do. I'll start with just pulling up the plants. I might use a little trowel like this just to dig in the ground. And as I'm digging, sometimes I will discover some potatoes. Sometimes they get a little bit deep, but you will usually find potatoes in there, a pretty good amount in each of the beds. Then I'll pull these out and I'll throw them in my compost bins. And then I will, once I get all the potatoes out, then I will take my shovel, my big shovel, and then I'll just dig down deep with my shovel to ensure that I'm not missing any potatoes. So here, as I'm pulling up the potatoes, you can see how the potatoes are attached to the roots of the plants. You just pull them up and they come right out. Oftentimes, at least when you're initially pulling them out, you can find some decent potatoes right there. And look at, even some baby potatoes. I love these little baby potatoes because they make great potatoes for soups. So don't discard anything. Even the little baby potatoes are good for something. Here's some more. Another little baby potato. So I'll wash up for soup. Another little baby potato on this guy right here. As I'm pulling it up, I can see some more coming up. So I'll start by just pulling the plants up and harvesting the potatoes that come out with the plant roots. And then I will, of course, take my trowel and dig in further. Like you can see, all the different potatoes that grow on these roots. And this bucket trash can system for growing potatoes is really my favorite method. I mean, I've tried different ways of growing it. This is my favorite. I get some pretty decent sized potatoes, and it's so easy to harvest them in potting soil that's nice and soft. And of course I add manure to the beds in the fall as well to add the nutrients for them for the spring growth. So anyway, there you have it. Easy ways to harvest potatoes. Well, here as I am harvesting my potatoes, I found a potato that had been exposed to too much light. This green area of the potato, as you can see, has developed a toxin. You don't want to eat any green areas of your potato. So if you find that when you're harvesting that maybe a portion of your potato had been exposed to too much light, all you need to do is cut this area of the potato off. And so I'll pretty much just slice it down here. And of course the part that is red, that was in the ground, is okay to eat. But the green areas you're going to need to cut off on any potatoes that had been exposed to too much light from not getting covered or growing up to the surface and I didn't get it covered. So that can happen to your potatoes. So what I'm going to do with these, I will go through all my potatoes as I am cleaning them up and cut off any of the green areas that I find, and those potatoes will be the ones we'll have for dinner tonight in order to be able to store the rest of the potatoes that don't have any damage to the potatoes. Well, here I am with my potatoes. As you can see, I got a pretty good supply. I've washed them and I'm in the process of drying them right now. And once they're all dry, you don't want any moisture. You want them thoroughly dry. Once they're all dry, I will put them away in a cool, dark place, preferably in the basement or a root cellar. In my case, I have a pantry that stays pretty cool. I'll put them in a bin in the pantry, making sure they have plenty of room to get air. You don't want them sealed up in a bag or anything. They will rot or they could decompose and that kind of thing. So you want to make sure it's kind of an airy situation. I have a big box I can put them in and let them winter in my pantry. And one thing that will happen after a couple months or so is they'll develop little roots coming off of them. What I usually do is, obviously I'll usually eat the smaller ones because they won't make it all winter. And the bigger ones, I love to make baked potatoes and different things like that. So I'll use those. But I will tend to keep like the medium-sized potatoes to be able to use them as starts in the spring when I want to start my crop again for next year. So I'll usually keep a few of these around, and they'll sprout up and they'll be all ready next spring to go back into my potato grow bins. As always, thanks again for watching. Feel free to check us out at greenlivingoffgrid.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our videos.